Hi, everyone. Today on the Writing Gym podcast, we're talking with Vermont author Jerry Johnson. You're going to walk away with specific tips on how to set your book to music, get inspiration for your poetry, publish your poetry, co-author a novel, avoid typos in your book, how to read well in order to write well, how to get over the loneliness of the writing life, and find the right editor for your book. Don't forget to download the freebie and follow along so you can get the most out of this episode at www.writing-gym.com/vtpoet.
Welcome to the Writing Gym Podcast. We're here to pump up your writing. And now your host, Andy Brixey, personal trainer at the Writing Gym.
Hi, I'm Andy, personal trainer at the Writing Gym. Welcome to HIT Training with Jerry Johnson. I'm excited to introduce you to this week's guest, but first, a word from our sponsor, the Writing Gym. You know, you could break free from feeling like your writing is never good enough. You know, you could write freely and achieve your publishing dreams. You're tired of rejection and lying awake till 2 a.m. wondering how you could have fixed your manuscript. Wallowing in self-doubt is not getting you closer to your writing goals. You need real standards, real support, and real change. Are you ready to transform your writing and take it from the slush pile to publishable? We are currently accepting select writers in the Writing Gym. Visit www.writing-gym.com to apply. And now I'd like to introduce our resident writing coach, the gal who helps you pump your writing into shape in the Writing Gym. Welcome back to the Writing Gym podcast, Annalisa Parent.
Thank you, Andy. I am so glad to be here.
And today, everyone, I have a fun little story out of actual school about Annalisa. In college, her roommate and her had 4 goldfish that they named after the Beatles. And ironically, or maybe not ironically, I'm not sure exactly, John died first, well before all of the other Beetlefish.
It's true.
Do you have any pictures of your adorable goldfish, Annalisa?
I don't think we took pictures of our adorable goldfish.
We will find something fun to put in our show notes at www.writing-gym.com/vtpoet. And now, to tell you about this lovely Vermont poet, Jerry Johnson lives in a restored century-old schoolhouse in Vermont's fabled Northeast Kingdom. He is a retired professor from Fitchburg State University in Massachusetts, where he was a finalist for the school's Excellence in Teaching Award. In addition, he has been a civil engineer, a tennis pro, carpenter, artist, freelance writer, and editor. Jerry is a graduate of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, where he was honored with the Eastern College Athletic Conference Award as the school's top scholar athlete. He received his master's degree from Purdue University. Jerry is the author of 2 celebrated books, Up the Creek Without a Saddle and Noah's Song. In his own words, I was blessed when John Gilmore and Peter Sutherland, 2 legendary Vermont master musicians, took a number of my poems in Up the Creek Without a Saddle and set them into song for a beautiful CD album to accompany the book. I was again blessed when Adrian Patinode illustrated Noah's Song and when John Gilmore set Noah's Song into music for a delightful CD to accompany this book. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jerry.
It's great to be here. I'm up here in the Northeast Kingdom, and you're in New York, I think?
I am.
And Annalisa's in Colorado.
Yes.
Where I lived for about 1 year.
Wow. Cool.
So Jerry, I want to start out with these questions. We talked to all these different authors, but what we haven't talked to people about is the fact that you started with a book of poetry, right? And then it turned into an illustrated children's book, which turned into CDs. Can you talk to us about that process? You know, you talked about meeting these artists and these composers. How did that go for you? How did all of this come about?
Well, in the early 90s, here's the short version. I met a poet playing tennis. We played tennis in St. Johnsbury. His name was Galway Canal. At the time, I didn't know who he was. I found out soon that shortly during that time, that he was the Poet Laureate of Vermont. And he encouraged me to write more. And in 2004, I published my first book, A Bed of Leaves. And I kept on writing. And then in around a couple of years ago, I completed a manuscript And I had a dream of finding a good Vermont singer to take some of the poems that would be in the book. So in 2004, I published my first book, A Bed of Leaves. I kept on writing, and a few years ago, I had this manuscript, but I had this dream of finding a really good Vermont singer, if I could, who could take some of the poems that would be in the book and set them into song. So what I did is I emailed friends throughout Vermont, and 100 to 200, I forget how many people, but two names kept coming back in these emails, John Galemore and Pete Sutherland. And I didn't know who either guy was. Some people say, Jerry, you're going to get out once in a while. And to make a long story short, they took a number of the poems that were going to be in the book, and they set them in the song for a CD that goes with the book. So here's the book, and my gift back to Vermont and people anywhere who like nature and animals and whatever is I put the CD in the book for free for people, and people who order directly from me, they get that CD with John and Pete. So that was a blast. One of the poems in that book is 99 in Up the Creek Without a Saddle. One of them is a children's poem that took me roughly 4 or 5 years to get right. Not that I was writing every day, but all these new critters wanted to get involved with the poem. And the rhythm was tricky and the rhyme was tricky. So that poem is on the CD. It's called Noah's Song. So that evolved into this book, where Noah's Song, where a friend of mine, Adrian Yellow Patino, did the 40 beautiful illustrations for the book. And I put the CD with John singing it in the inside cover. So all of the senses will be covered. If the child is old enough, he or she can read it on her own. Or they could pop in the CD and John takes them right through all the pages and all the words in Noah's Song. So that's my story of where I am right now.
I love that, Jerry. I had no idea that that was the origin of your picture book. So, just so that our audience is clear, Jerry is a very talented guy. So not only is he a Vermont poet, but he's also written this picture book, which I'm looking at him so I can see this picture book. It's beautiful with beautiful paintings in it that he's just held up. So just filling in the audience there on what's going on. So tell us a little bit about that, Jerry. What is it like to be a poet?
Well, I don't write every day. I typically write when something hits me, and that generally hits me when I'm driving. And there's something maybe about the rhythm of the tires hitting the road. Generally, I don't have the radio going unless it's Vermont Public Radio. And something will come to me, and I'll pull over and I'll write down what's coming into my head. And I would say that probably at least 90% of the poems I've ever written in my life, and there's hundreds that I've written, have started when I've been driving. And I don't want to write while I'm driving, but I've been known to put a few notes down on a piece of paper while I am, but typically I will pull over.
That's super interesting. So tell us a little bit more about what inspires you.
That's a tricky question because it can come from anywhere. Definitely nature has inspired a number of my poems, and the animals that have been in my life, horses, dogs, cats, wild animals, people, situations that have happened in my life. Right now, I am co-writing a novel, and because I like to write different genres, and I'm co-writing this novel with Pat Gowdy O'Brien, and Pat has been great. I've known her for a number of years. She's a former president of the League of Vermont Writers, and she was instrumental in editing, helping me edit and get Noah's Song and Up the Creek Without a Saddle to be perfect, because one typo in a book will drive me nuts. And she's great at that. And through the years, I've had this dream of writing a novel. And sadly, a famous writer who lives 3 miles up the road from me, Howard Mosier, passed away just recently, in January, and we had a wonderful service for him just a few days ago. But he was aware that I was writing this novel. And about a week before he passed away, I visited with him and mentioned the novel, and he remembered. And I told him that Pat and I are co-writing the book together, and that we're dedicating it to him. And he couldn't speak because of his condition, but he smiled and put 2 thumbs up. So Pat and I have our work cut out for us.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Jerry, and I'm so glad that you brought up Howard, and we'll post a link to the tribute that I created for him, the video tribute. He was really a treasure in the Vermont literary community, and we all miss him very, very much.
Well, he was a wonderful support for other writers.
Yes.
As good as a writer he was, and award-winning and everything else, he willingly gave me wonderful quotes for the covers of my books, and he would email me periodically with wonderful things, and we chatted quite a bit. And so he's been a wonderful influence in my life, and he's going to be missed, but his books will live on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your reading life. One of the things that we talk about a lot in the Writing Gym is the importance of the connection between reading and writing. So you mentioned Howard's books. What do you like to read?
Oh, if we could take the camera and just go around my house, I've got, I don't know how many bookcases that are loaded up.
I think I've moved some in preparation for a retreat one time.
I have poetry books, novels, memoirs, and hundreds and hundreds of books, and I like to purchase. I have a lot of the old classics, if you will. Old Robert Frost books and Shakespeare, and going way back, Kenneth Roberts, and who wrote The Call of the Wild? Jack London. All these books that have influenced me in so many different ways, but I like a lot of the contemporary stuff, and many of the books from contemporary Vermont writers that I have in my house.
That's great. Thank you for those tips. That's really helpful.
Could I mention one other thing before I forget?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I love doing collaborations, and because people say you're writing such a lonely thing. Well, in a way it is, but for me, getting together and working with John Gilmore and Pete Sutherland, that was just a fantastic thing. And working with Pat Gowdy O'Brien right now, and together with her, it's just great creating something together. Now, a few weeks ago, I contacted John Gilmore. I said, John, it's right up your alley, and I love kids too. Let's write a kids book together. A fun rhyming thing, and I spoke with him today, and it's going to be a go. So John and I are getting together, and we're going to do a kids book, and more than likely, it's going to be a picture book with some fun rhymes in it, and so that type of thing. Working with somebody, finding somebody to work with. Not everyone can do it, and people who are out there, if you're going to collaborate with somebody, the chemistry has to be right, right? You've got to have a wonderful respect for each other, but you got to get along too. Right. So I've been blessed that way.
How do you pick the people that you collaborate with, Jerry? That's something that we have authors ask a lot. They're interested in working on a collaboration, but they're not sure exactly, you know, the kind of criteria that they should look for in a writing partner. They know the way that they write, but do the people that you work with work in the same way as you, or do they work in an opposite way as you? Do you bounce ideas off of each other? What do you look for in a writing partner?
Well, with John and Pete, I was a little bit lucky because I really didn't know who they were exactly. It just, I call it the powers of the universe. Said, Jerry, we're going to bring these two people into your life. I kind of lucked out that way. With Pat Gowdy O'Brien, I've just known her for a long time, and we know each other, and she liked the premise of my novel, and she's a wonderful writer. So things are just coming together well. I mean, there's other people out there that are on my list for possible collaborations, but you know, one step at a time. I mean, I've got 10 more books in my head that I want to do. So
that's great. That's great. And so what advice would you give for people who maybe feel a little bit lonely in their writing life and would like to consider collaboration?
Okay. Tennis has been my sport throughout my life. Okay. If you're going to play tennis, who should you hang out with? Other tennis players, yes. And if you're going to write, I mean, for me, I hang out with other writers. You know, joint organizations such as the League of Vermont Writers. Such great opportunities, such learning experiences with these particular events that these organizations put on. Just in meeting people, you're going to be able to click with certain people in a certain way. And they may be the ones you can collaborate on something. They may help you write a book. They may edit for you, okay? Even if you were writing it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something that Annalise has emphasized so much, and something that we talk about in the Writing Gym VIP group all the time, is that, you know, a lot of writing is who you know, because who you know can also be who you're inspired by and who can help you down the road. So it becomes one of those things where, you know, you hang out with these other writers and you're inspired by their work, and they're in turn inspired by your work. And because of those connections, you meet other writers or editors or authors or other authors or publishers or people who do cover art, like all of these connections that you can make just by, you know, simply having a conversation with another writer. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, definitely. I mean, so, you know, I just encourage people to get out there, join organizations, get involved with Annalisa. She's good at what she does.
Mary, I have a question. You talked about being annoyed by typos and spelling errors and grammar issues in your book. Do you have an editor that you usually go with? The person that you were mentioning earlier, how do you go about editing your book? That's a question that we have a lot from different authors, because they're nervous about, you know, giving their work to someone new, and how do they go about that process?
Well, my books are poetry, really, right now, even though a novel's coming up. So throughout the entire process of writing Up the Creek Without a Saddle, which ended up being 99 poems, those poems through the years were emailed to friends, not necessarily editors or anything, just friends, you know, to get their reaction on stuff. Because I like to share my stuff with people. But when the time came when I wanted this to be in a book, I mean, if you look in like the front cover, you know, in the acknowledgments, there's a list of people who have helped me edit that book. Pat Gowdy O'Brien, Matt Mayo, and the list goes on. And the things in the poem, the acknowledgments, the preface, and all this, that was gone through the eyes of people who were professionals at doing this. Okay, and some people go, well, my Aunt Ethel's gonna do it for me. She got a B+ in freshman English in high school, and she's really good. I mean, no, you gotta go beyond that. There are world-class writers who, sadly, have typos in their books. It's not that some of them are probably accidents or whatever, but one typo. One good thing about print on demand, you can get them fixed.
That's true.
before you get your next batch of books,
Yeah, and I mean, you raise an interesting point, Jerry, because at the end of the day, it isn't just about typos, because frequently, sloppy is sloppy. So it's not just the text that's missing some periods or something, but the thinking isn't refined yet in those cases. And, you're talking about a copy editor who helps you with your syntax, your grammar, your usage, your mechanics, that kind of thing. But a content editor is really important as well, even for advanced writers. I've got a book that comes out next month. Did I use a copy editor? Yes, of course I did. Did I use a content editor? Yes, of course I did. That's really, really important, both of those steps, even for people like you and me who, have a lot of experience in this writing thing.
Well, I feel like we've talked about this in the podcast before. It's talking about the level of professionalism that you want to present to your reader. And I know that personally as a reader, if I open up a book or, and I'm reading something in my Kindle or something like that, and I see a bunch of errors, whether that's grammatical, whether it's something that I can't understand that they've written, I immediately become disinterested. And that's definitely not something that you want when someone's purchased your book.
Sure.
I've told a number of people, and this would apply to me too. Even if I never sold one book, these books and the books that other people write, they're your legacy. They're going to be here when you're gone. Okay? And people might be reading them 40 years from now or whatever. And, to me, from my personal point of view, from my books, I want them to be as perfect as they can be. And again, whether or not I ever sell a book. And the other thing is, you want people, if you do want to sell a few books, you want your readers to tell other people, boy, that's a really good book. Because they're going to be your best advertisers, other people, and bookstores and libraries and wherever your books appear.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jerry. And, because I know you in real life through the League of Vermont Writers, I know that you're really good at that word of mouth marketing. And you and I have talked about that before. So, let's revisit that topic. What are some of the things that you do to sell your books?
Walking and talking. I mean, I have my books with me all the time when I'm out driving around. I never know when the opportunity might be when somebody wants one of my books. And I get my books into various stores. I get them into bookstores. I get them into gift shops, into libraries. I like networking with people. I like going to meetings. Just places where people are hanging out. And you can advertise on even Facebook. I mean, you can pay for ads and put them out there. And there's just so many different avenues that you can do to get your books out there. And I guess I'm really shy, you know. But deep down, I really am. But and through the years, you know, people, they don't like stepping out of their comfort zone.
Right.
And you're going to find out that you get more people supporting you than you think when it comes to books. Yeah, you're going to have people that they're going to be naysayers. That happens in anything you do in life. But there's going to be more people who are supporting you. And if you step out of your comfort zone, you're going to find out, hey, that wasn't so bad, and your comfort zone becomes bigger. Think of it as a bigger circle. It was this size, and now you stepped out, and now your comfort zone is this size. And then you step out again, and it becomes bigger. And you're going, well, a few bumps along the way, but I'm now more comfortable with myself and dealing with other people and getting the word out. I gotta plug my artist, Adrian. God rest his soul, he's passed away. But he sold more paintings than anybody I've ever known. And he taught me a lot. And he was just a great guy. People loved him. And he said, Jerry, I show people my work every day. They don't buy a painting all the time, but a lot of them do. And if I don't show them my work, they don't know it exists.
Right.
And, you know, Adrian he taught me so much, and by that one statement than anything else.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, you mentioned being shy, and it does take a certain amount of courage. In that case, you're not just putting yourself out there, you're also putting your creation out there. So there's some courage that has to happen.
And it all comes back. Write a good book. Write something that you're proud of, right? And you love it. That's gonna raise your confidence. Okay, that's gonna put you on a higher plateau for yourself.
That's true. That's such a good point. You know, one of the things that we talk about a lot, and even like in our episode on self-publishing, you know, our philosophy is we're not against self-publishing, but regardless of what you're going to do or how you're going to get published, you need to have a quality product. That's really the bottom line.
Oh my God, you just self-publishing. I mean, I could name so many incredible Vermont writers who are self-published. This stuff is awesome. Mm-hmm. It's great stuff. And many of them in the past had gone the traditional route, right? The industry is quite different. So whether you self-publish, whether you go find a large mainstream publisher, or you find a small house, again, on something like that, find a party that you're comfortable working with. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you're having somebody help you self-publish, make sure it's somebody you like working with, right? Somebody who knows their shtick and somebody you like working with.
Right. Right. Those are really good tips. Thank you for that, Jerry. I think that our listeners are really going to appreciate the advice that you shared with us today.
And all the advice that you shared with us today, Jerry, there is one question that we ask every person that we have on the podcast. And that question is, it's the big final last question. If you had one piece of advice to give to aspiring authors, what would it be?
That's a great question. If I had to pick one thing, write about what you like writing about. If it's writing poems, write poems. If you want to write a novel, you write one. How about a short story? Write something, and and write whatever comes to you.
Yeah.
And don't let it go. Write it down. You never know when it's going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've written poems that I tell people, and it's true, they took me 30 years to finish. I found pieces of paper in a box. I took them out. I said, where'd this come from? Oh my God, I started this 30 years ago. I think I'll finish it now. And some of these things that you're writing down, they can appear in a final publication of something that you do.
Right. Right. That's a really good piece of advice. Thank you for that, Jerry.
Thank you so much, Jerry.
You're welcome.
And if everyone would like to go out and buy some of Jerry's fantastic books, we are going to include links to his website where you can purchase them and check out some of his work at www.writing-gym.com/vtpoet. Thank you, Annalisa, for more of your great writing advice. Annalisa is the resident writing coach in the Writing Gym. She helps writers start, finish, and bring to publication writing in all genres. And as you heard Jerry say, she's pretty much the best at it. You know, you could publish if you only knew how. Jerry has given us some great tips today, but look, if you love the Writing Gym podcast, if you find these tips valuable, think of how much faster your writing will get pumped into publishing shape in the Writing Gym. We take you from generating ideas to getting them on paper, from how to find an agent to how to market your book. You'll also connect with other fantastic writers who will support you and give you quality feedback. We even have a personal trainer, me, to help to keep you accountable to your writing goals. You know how you always say, I love to write, but I just can't find the time? Well, what would it be like to have a gentle guide, someone to check in with you on how you're doing on your weekly writing goals? Well, you can. You can get the accountability you need to make the time for writing in the Writing Gym. If you're serious about pumping your writing into publishing shape, go to www.writing-gym.com. Thank you so much for joining us to pump up your writing here on the Writing Gym podcast. Happy writing!
This has been the Writing Gym podcast with Andy Brixey and Annalisa Parent. To join the Writing Gym, visit www.writing-gym.com.